This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Fred Marshall on the show. He's the author of a book, Thrive, The Antidote to Future Shock. And we're going to talk about how to help us and individuals and leaders future-proof ourselves. He's also the founder and CEO of Quantum Learning, so we'll probably hit on that as well. Anyway, with all that being said, Fred, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into quantum learning, how you started that, and why you decided to write this book, Thrive, right now.
Okay. Well, I'll give you the short version of all that.
Sure.
Started out as a biochemist, loved science, but really wanted to start my own company for the longest time. And so 30 years ago, I started Quantum Learning. We help pharmaceutical companies launch new brands in oncology, all the spaces that impact a lot of people, cancer and infectious diseases and pretty much everything. Did that for 30 years and then recently retired from that business. And in the meantime, about 7 years ago, I started investigating AI. I've always been interested in neuroscience and have done a deep dive in neuroscience for 20 years. I mean, really a deep interest. And I started investing in AI startups. And it became clear to me, seeing the pitch decks and having access to the data rooms and seeing what's coming in the future, that it's going to be a lot. And I thought, nobody's really ready for this. The implications are pretty serious. I think I'm in a unique position to help because my whole career has been around helping not just manage change, but effect change. We look at the sales and marketing process as a change management problem. How do you help somebody move from this way of thinking and being to a different way of thinking and being? And that turns out to be an incredibly successful and important way to approach it. Now, could we apply some of those things to this new world that's emerging? And so I decided to write Thrive. And then I talked to my buddy, Peter Diamandis, and he said, yes, you should totally write that book. And I said, okay, will you do the forward? He said, yeah, I'll do the forward. So here we are.
Awesome. That sounds great. So tell me a little bit about, as you're looking through this and you see the overwhelming knowledge and information that's coming to us right now. There's a lot of people like me who feel overwhelmed of not knowing, what to do, what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
How, is this going to take my job? Is this going to take my neighbor's job? What all is going to be changing? Because, I think we went through this before, right? We've had different revolutions in the past when it goes to like the technology, steam engine, that was one of the beginnings. Then we had assembly lines, and then we had the computer revolution. And now we're kind of in this intelligence age. How do we navigate this?
Well, so the way I think about it is, first of all, the new AI revolution, if you want to call it that, is a lot bigger and a lot more comprehensive and is self-improving. So it makes it fundamentally different. Steam engines didn't help you build better steam engines, but AI builds better AI. And we're seeing that. That leads to acceleration. And so the forces that I see operating right now that are causing that overwhelm there's a bunch of them. I'll just touch the three most important ones. First, we're fully in the information age. So we've got way too much content streaming into our brains, more than our bodies were designed to handle. And so information overload is one problem to solve. A second problem is uncertainty. Where is my job going to be 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Nobody knows. What workflows are going to be disrupted? What workflows are going to be protected? How do I think about it? That's a big area of concern, and it's one of the main reasons why I wrote the book, is to empower people to navigate that. The third force is the attention economy. And what I mean by that is, how many times a day do you look at your phone? If you're the average millennial, me too, right? If you're the average millennial in the United States, it's over 100 times a day. That's once every 9 minutes, boom, there I am. And I'm sort of locked in for a minute or two. It's hard to build the future you want in 9-minute increments. And so those three things I think are the primary forces that we have to navigate. And that's sort of one way of looking at it. There's a fourth thing that's really important, and that is because AI is self-improving. This is sort of a glass half full, half empty kind of moment. How do you look at that? You could look at it as, oh, it's self-improving, it's going to outrun me. Or you could say, this is the most incredible thing ever. How could I ride that self-improvement wave to do things I could never do before? And so I hope we'll have time to talk about that, how to look at AI, how to look at your job and career, and how to leverage the incredible power that's coming and use it to do cool stuff, to live an amazing life, to build the future that you want.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's one of the things that I always try to talk to people about. I give a talk about how AI is changing technology to a group of students that were getting ready to start their careers, and they were all fearful about like, will I have a career to go to? And I was saying, yes, you will have a career to go to. And the people that embraced this new technology, and instead of focusing on learning a certain software language or something like that, learn how to think, learn how to learn, and learn how to enjoy this stuff, and to build new things and try new things. But by doing that, you're going to position yourself to be one of the most marketable ones out there.
I think so. And it's where do you come from? What's your fundamental place? What's your fundamental perspective? We could be fear-based and skeptical. That's an easy position to fall into. Or you could be strategic and curious. If you're strategic and curious, you look at it and you go, wow, what could this do? How could I leverage this? And then you rub a little creativity in the mix, and now you have the perfect storm of creative and entrepreneurial activity. You could start your own business today. I mean, there's no doubt that in the next 5 to 7 years, there's going to be a one-person billion-dollar company with a swarm of AI agents handling each function of the business. And so, that could be you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think looking at it with that optimistic perspective and having that lens to show like all the positives that can come out of this is the appropriate way to do it. Others is you're going to have a hard go of it. You're going to have a rough time.
Well, you'll just be stressed all the time. Your whole mindset will be, oh no, oh no, oh no. My son, he had a funny little quote. He said, it's clinching energy. He said, you don't want clinching energy. And I thought, that's such a funny way to put it, but it's kind of true. It's like, oh, I'm all uptight. My shoulders are up. It's like, eh. It's like, nah. You're going to be fine. You have plenty of time. Open your mind, be curious, be strategic, and everything else will take care of itself.
So I want to hit on this attention economy you just mentioned, because, if we have this very short amount of attention span, how do we spend the deep time, to do the deep work, to actually learn and invest and be curious enough to dive into these topics?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the best question for us to answer today. If we can answer that really well, we're going to help a lot of people. So thank you for asking that. I have a 3-bucket model that I use that's super simple, and it basically says this. The prelude is, what's most important in your life? We're only really needing to focus on 2 things. Building the future we want. That takes time, because everything that you want in life is on the other side of bigger arcs of time. So what are those things? Love, relationships, building systems in your life to automate stuff and simplify your life, health, wealth. Those are all bigger arcs. You can't do it over the weekend. So that's one. Focus on building the future you want. And then the second is managing the present moment. And I divide that roughly into 2 bits. First is enjoying the present moment. That's important. I try to enjoy at least, a few minutes every day and kind of have a little moment, a little zen, a little something cool happen. And it's all there if your eyes are open for it. And the second is managing the present moment. I got to take out the trash, respond to my boss's emails, all this stuff of, life. There's a third category though, and that's noise. And that is the problem with the attention economy. So back to the 3 buckets. The first bucket is, what are my priorities? Priorities are things that are going to change your future. My workouts are a priority. It's going to change my future. It's not going to pay off now. It's going to pay off in the long run. Relationships, those little, text messages, little emotional deposits, all those things add up. So being clear about your priorities is number 1. And then second, when somebody calls for your attention, ask yourself, is that a priority? Yes or no? If it is, then give it your attention. If it's not, then maybe the second question, and that is obligations. So obligations are things that maintain the present. They maintain your house. I got to vacuum, I got to clean, I got to do the stuff, mow the lawn, all this, the maintenance things of life, if you will. We have a lot of obligations in our life. And if something's an obligation, I don't have to do it right now. If something's calling for my attention, an obligation says, hey, Fred, do this now. I can go, maybe now, maybe later. I could delegate it. I could automate it. I could put it in a system. There are a lot of ways to handle obligations. And basically, you want to automate as much as you can. And AI is like it's going to be the super delegator of our lives. It's going to be incredible. Third is noise. Noise is calling for our attention all the time. And we have to just say no, see ya. And really just like have a little wall there, talk to the hand, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so as you go through your day, if you ask yourself, is this a priority? Something's demanding your attention. Is this a priority? Okay, let it in. Is this an obligation? I'll deal with it, but maybe not now. I'm not going to let it hijack my moment, my present moment. And noise, say no. And then the next really important part is to use the power of compound growth. And so what that's all about is if you consistently invest in something, it'll grow exponentially. It won't just be a linear growth. It'll start to ramp up because it's building on itself. So to apply that concept to what we just talked about, if you have, I call it weekifying, if you have a priority, schedule it in your calendar. I might not be able to get something done today or even tomorrow or even the day after tomorrow, but I can almost always get it done by the end of the week. And so if you schedule blocks of time in your calendar for the priorities, manage the obligations well and ignore the noise, you're going to make progress and things are going to compound. So twice a week I do a workout. Once a week I play tennis. That handles the VO2 max goal that I have to get that roller because that's important for longevity. But that's the basic idea. The 3 buckets, it's so simple, but it works.
Yeah, I never really thought about the compounding the growth. But you're right, because we have these chemicals in our brain that, when we do something and we check something off that to-do list, we do something that's, a priority. We want to do the next priority too. We have that encouragement.
It's true. Once I started really focusing on exercising, suddenly I was like, wait a minute, what am I putting in my body? Then nutrition sort of snuck into the mix. And then relationships. Who am I hanging out with? This toxic person. It's like, no, I don't have time for this. Bring in people who are elevating. I have a saying, the right people simplify everything. If you bring great people into your life, and this is another part of that investment mindset, you bring great people into your life, they will change your future in the most beautiful way. It's incredible. It's incredible. They'll open doors to possibilities that are impossible to achieve on your own. And that's maybe another message for people listening or watching this podcast is your relationships are catalysts to your growth and doors to new opportunities. Opportunities to contribute, but also opportunities to amplify what you want to do and achieve.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And, I can just look back on my life, and there was a quote that I learned, I heard probably 20 years ago, that you are the, average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yeah. And I wanted to make it a point on my professional level to spend, and at the time, I think I was a newly, entry software manager, just managing my first software team.
Okay.
And I wanted to try to spend time with CEOs and CIOs and CTOs and people that were on that top tier of technology. And by spending time with them, I became like, obviously I was the lowest of those people, but it elevated my career because as potential openings came up, I knew somebody and I had conversed with somebody and they were able to help me. And I became the average of that over time.
Yeah. And that's so true. And one of the ways I think about it is, when you interact with people who are operating at a really high level. So the last 10 years of my life, I've been hanging out with people who are operating at the highest levels in our society. They are building the future. They are building chips. They're designing new technologies that are going to be available in 4 or 5 years. These startups that I've been investing in, the way they think is unbelievably great. The clarity, the simplicity, the focus, the a broad understanding that they have of the world and how to get things done, that is so valuable. I've learned more. It's ironic. I'm 70 years old, so I've been around for a while. I've learned more in the last 5 years of strategic value than I
Mhm.
have in the last 50 years. It's surprising because I'm hanging around a different level of person, and that's good. It's good for your soul and it's good for your career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. One question I do have for you that might
Yeah.
be really helpful for our listeners is we mentioned noise, twice now.
Oh man.
What are some practical, easy steps that people can do to try to shut down that noise and eliminate the temptation of going after the noise?
Yeah. So this is, noise is often disguised as priorities.
Yes.
But I love music, so I'll get a notification, or I love movies and film too. So I'll get a notification. Oh, there's a new trailer for this, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like, what? It's like, every, molecule in my body wants to watch that trailer. And I just go later. And I put my phone on focus mode for sometimes for an hour, sometimes for the whole day. And I just say no to it. I've gotten good at saying no to 1,000 things, so you can say yes to the 2 or 3, 4 things that really matter. So that's one. Focus mode and just being mindful. This is not a priority. It's disguised as a priority. It feels urgent, but it's not. Ignore it. The second is just scheduling stuff in your calendar. And with my little secret sauce is with another person. So if
That's
I
good.
schedule a tennis lesson, I can't let Chris down. I got to show up. He depends on me. I'm paying him. I'm part of his income stream. I don't want to do that to him.
Mhm.
So I never miss a lesson because I want to be there for Chris, and Chris wants to be there for me. So that interpersonal dynamic really helps. And so if you can schedule your priorities and couple it with people who are supporting you and helping you, that's powerful. But even if you don't have that, just schedule a block of time, 20 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes, whatever you can squeeze in. I know that most people, based on, if you swipe left on your phone and look at your phone screen time,
Mhm.
you have time. Look at that screen time and you'll realize, oh man, I've got like hours every day that I could be spending, at least an hour. 1 hour a week could change your future if you pick the right area. And I think Steph Curry is kind of a good example of this. He's my poster child for somebody who did everything right. He picked a strategic area, the 3-point shot, boom, that nobody had mastered. He figured if he could master that, it would transform the game. It would transform his career. And boy, did it do both of those things. It was
Yes.
just been incredible. And he dedicated practice, time, and energy to being that master. What's your 3-point shot? And it doesn't have to be forever, like, because the game of basketball is fixed and it doesn't change. So you could do that in basketball. But the idea is right. Pick something that you know is going to be around for a couple of years and then make that your 3-point shot and really do a deep dive into it and obsess. I think, can we use the O word, obsession? I
Yeah.
think I think getting obsessed and staying obsessed is kind of the secret to breakthrough and moving to the next level. If you obsess and focus and just pour your attention, the most valuable resource you have is your attention. Pour your attention into it, good things are going to come out.
I think that's really good advice. And would you recommend that people right now, as this AI revolution is happening, should AI, or a segment of AI be one of their 3-point shots?
I think it should be
Mhm.
for a whole bunch of reasons. First, it's going to happen whether you want it to or not. So that ship has sailed, and the math and it's going to happen. Second, depending on how you approach it, you could do really cool things. So let's talk about AI for a little bit. So there are different levels of application of AI. One is to automate some kind of workflow. And that's what people are thinking about now. This is like, is AI going to take my job? It's probably going to take a workflow.
Right.
Okay, whatever. But workflow is kind of a small unit of action. A good example for me in my world right now is I'm recording the audio for this book, literally this week. And so I'm in the studio and there are a lot of mouth clicks and air, pops
Mhm.
on the microphone. And they used to have to undo that by hand or, wipe it out by hand. Now there's an AI agent that could just go and do it. So that's classic automation. But if you helicopter up to a higher level, you can create tremendous value by thinking about the biggest systems in some larger process. So let me give you an example that involves Ben Affleck. In the film industry, there are three big beats to the way movies get made. There's pre-production, there's production. That's when they film and the actors show up and they've got lights and cameras and they capture everything. And then there's post-production. And so Ben Affleck said, gee, the post-production process is a mess right now because what happens is, you do all your pre-planning and then you do the shoot and you bring in Matt Damon, your buddy, and you shoot the show, you shoot the film and you get everything done and it's all locked. That's a wrap. You have the wrap party. Everybody goes away. Now you're in post and you realize it's not working. You go, oh, crap. What do I do now? I need a scene to fill in the blanks here, or I need to change the angle of the sun because it's a continuity problem or something. I've got to fix it, but I don't have any assets and I can't bring Matt back because he's on another shoot. He's on another project. What do? This happens all the time in filmmaking, it turns out. So he said, what if we took all the film that we've captured, put it into an AI agent or AI system, and then had it generate Matt Damon, but just for this film project. So it's taking his real performance and it's inflecting him to fill in the gaps in the post-production process. So I make a film that makes sense. And he sold that company to Netflix for an undisclosed amount. That's a really good example of solving big problems. So there are a lot of individual workflows underneath that ladder up, but that big problem is worth, hundreds of millions of dollars at least, maybe even, we don't know what he sold it for, but it's worth a lot of money to Netflix and they were happy to pay for it. So thinking not about individual workflows, but the larger things that are getting in the way that need to be solved, that's a good mindset to have when using AI. Like, what are the big problems that need to be solved and how could AI facilitate that? And maybe it's a combination of things too. We could talk all day about different use cases in the film industry for using AI in combination with other technologies to do amazing things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely the way to think about it. It's what problems can we solve? I feel like a lot of people though are trying to, maybe this is just what I'm saying, is they're trying to use AI to solve problems that don't exist.
Yeah.
How do we avoid that? Because that sounds like noise to me.
It sure is. Well, and it's what level you're thinking at. So if you think about if you're at the task level in your mindset, like this task is a pain for me. How do I make it simple for me? That's a very narrow view. But if you just helicopter up and say, well, how does my deliverable fit into the larger workflow of the team of which I'm a part, or the organization of which I'm a part, and ask, well, what are the problems that they're having at other levels? What could I contribute to those larger things that need to get done? And that's the problem solving side. The second side is the do cool new things that we could never do before. And that's fun too. My favorite example is The Mandalorian. So Lucasfilm created this amazing thing where they've got this LCD screen, or not LED screen that wraps around 270 degrees and is 20 feet high. And they put the whole background of the Mandalorian, whatever planet you want to be on, they put it there. The actors stand in front of that and they shoot the film. And they record it in record time. It lets you do things that you'd never do before because it costs too much to build a set, to go to location, to get the kind of angles and the cinematography. So they just build it virtually. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Well, that's one example of being able to do something we could never do before using AI.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And I like what you're saying about it's where you're looking at things. If you're looking at the task level, because a lot of people say, well, how can I do this certain task faster or better? And I think what we should be doing is using AI to see whether we even need to do that task at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah,
And often the answer is no.
yes, I've discovered that in my life too. There was a book that I read a long time ago. It was about Tim Ferriss and the 4-hour work week, where he talked about just what can you eliminate and just finding things to do that. And that's been very helpful for me over my career for sure.
Well, one of the things that I focus on in the book Thrive is this. It's broken into 3 journeys: the internal journey, the external journey, the shared journey. And then the internal journey, one of the big problems that we have to solve is, there are a lot of ways to say it, but it's this emotional impulse to act. So let me give you an example. Something happens in my world and it's stressing me out. So now I'm carrying this stress. I'm worried, or I feel like I need to get this done, or it's an obligation to somebody else. And that pressure is causing me to take action not because the action is useful, but because I feel the emotional pressure to act. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that emotional pressure to act causes me to take actions that oftentimes I don't need to do at all. I could literally just ignore it. And this first came to me when I felt an obligation to do something, and it was keeping me up at night. It was really a mess. And then something got in the way, and I had to fly to Europe, actually, on a big trip to do something else. And I completely forgot about it, and nothing bad happened. And I thought, wait, how many more things do I feel pressured to do that absolutely do not matter, but they felt like they mattered? So distinguishing between what feels important versus what is important is part of the internal journey.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And I've noticed that too. There has been times where I would take, especially when I was a kind of a new manager, I'd take vacation. And I thought, well, I have to check my messages all the time. I have to constantly be on call.
Yeah.
And my wife was telling me that we were getting ready to go to Alaska. This was,
Cool.
20 years ago. And she's like, well, just don't, just don't. And I was like, okay. So I left I set my out of office response to saying, hey, if you get this message, then I'm out of the country and I will not be responding to messages. If you need me, send me a message after this date. All these messages will be deleted. And when I came back, I was so scared. I just selected all, delete. Okay, I'm not looking at my inbox. I just deleted everything. So if they need me, they will message me back. And you know what? Nothing bad happened. Because the people that did need me, they messaged me back, and everybody else figured out a way without me, and it was just a pressure relief.
This is such a deep truth. I love this because everybody who's listening or watching this has had that experience, right? Where you feel this internal pressure, and it's usually emotionally charged. And so now you're really, you're in a frenzy almost. And the question is, okay, does it really matter? Yes or no? And often the answer is, nah, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. So that's a good example for the internal journey. What's an example for external journey?
So the external journey is about literally building the future you want. What's worth investing in? And I think one of my favorite questions is, what's worth compounding over 10 years? Just ask yourself, if I compounded something over 10 years so that it went not like this, but it went whoom, what would be worth doing? Meeting the love of my life and building a family.
Relationships, right?
That would be worth 10 years, compounding that. Absolutely. How about health? Yeah.
Yes.
You can go down the list, and if you start to answer that question, what's worth compounding, then you don't let the little stuff get in the way. And having clarity about priorities, I think, is the secret sauce. A handful of them, don't try to do too much. Remember that you have time. Life is long. We're going to live longer than we think. And so you have a lot of time. You don't have to do everything today. You don't have to be urgent and stressing and frazzled and running from thing to thing to thing. Be more strategic. Take consistent action. And wow, does it add up? And then add these AI tools, which are amplifiers, and then you get some acceleration.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And the last one, the shared journey. What's the difference between the internal, external, and shared?
So the shared journey is really about the dawn of human AI symbiosis. And the way this came to me was I was working with ChatGPT. And you know how when you have a friend that you're really close with, you can finish each other's sentences.
Yes.
You know where they're going. So I started to have that feeling with ChatGPT. It was like, what the hell? This is weird. Like this, I've never experienced this before. It's like, so I just did a little test. I said, like, I'm getting the feeling like we can finish each other's sentences. Let's try. It was eerie at first and then super cool later. And ChatGPT didn't get it all, and I didn't get what it was thinking, but we've gotten better. And I realized that over time, you can get into this overlap of neural nets, if you will, where my neural net is really good at certain things. AI's neural net is really good at certain things. Together, wow, that's a formidable combination. And so I've literally done that. And if you add agentic AI into the mix, where you can have agents do, anything you can do on a keyboard, AI can do today, Claude Bot and all that. you can form kind of a seamless partnership, train AI to reflect your values, your priorities, your goals, and then wow, let it run, and that frees you up to do all these other things. It's pretty cool, and it's getting easier and better by the day. And by 2027, it's going to be super easy to build AI agents to do whatever you can imagine.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when I play around with agents and have them do things for me, that it sometimes it's shocking and I feel obsolete. How quickly they can do certain things, especially on the software development side of the house for sure.
Oh yeah.
Um, where do you think this is going when it comes to in with robotics? Like imagine, having
Yeah.
a robot in your house with the power of AI that you can converse with, have conversations with, that can do your laundry, cook your food, cut your grass,
Yeah.
etc.
A couple of years ago, I was in a meeting with Brett Adcock, and he runs the company Figure, and we and a bunch of other folks had a big conversation about just this topic. And of course, you know that Elon is building the
Yeah.
Optimist, and that's all on its way. So I honestly, between you and me, I don't know what the future brings. I think we can make some realistic projections that are probably going to end up being true, and then beyond that, it's an event horizon I can't see beyond. I don't know if anybody can. But short term, what we know is robots are going to be really good at doing specialized things. We see that in factories already, and AI is helping. And digital twins, which, Jensen Huang is championing at NVIDIA, the idea of building digital twins of factories and any workflow or process, make a digital twin, work out the bugs. And that's a kind of a robot. It happens to be a fully digital robot. It's not embodied in a physical robot, but it's a digital twin of something. And so that's an area that's ripe for development and exploration. Um, will there be robots walking around like C3PO and R2D2? Yeah, I think so. And will they
Yeah.
be, funny in the way C3PO is? I think they will.
I think they will too. I think they'll be whatever you want them to be, including somebody with a sense of humor, which is what we want.
Yeah, yeah. So it's gonna. We all, everybody in that world knows that the hand is the big thing to solve, and the weight is the big thing to solve. I had a long conversation just a couple of weeks ago about somebody who's specializing in this area and building a robot, and he has built a diminutive robot, meaning it's about 5'3", and it doesn't weigh very much. And he made a big deal of that because he said, if a robot falls over, it can crush a child.
Yeah.
And so the weight matters. And so expect to see diminutive robots in the house that if, they trip, they do fall. It happens. People fall too. It's not going to create a lot of damage. And so I think we're going to see robots doing the obvious simple things initially, but later on, I could picture just like you have apps on your phone, you'd have apps that you could download into your robot to do different things. You wanted to do surgery, there's an app for that. Once they solve the hand
Mhm.
and the weight problem, the hand is really the biggest barrier right now, having the manual dexterity that we have and the balance. Once that gets solved and it's on its way to being solved, I saw some really cool things. I can't go into details because I'm under non-disclosure, but some really cool stuff that is very articulate and sensitive with sensors in the fingertips and all kinds of sophisticated things that we take for granted. Once that hits, and I'd say maybe 2028, 930, somewhere in that window is when that's going to be really good. Uh, Everything is possible. And, what kind of robot do you want? Let me download the software. And of course, they'll
Yeah.
charge you for it. And of course, it'll be software as a
Yeah.
service. It'll be a monthly fee.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the part I don't like, but it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine them being like, I like Harry Potter. My family,
Oh
they're
yeah,
big
me
Harry
too.
Potter fans. Imagine having little house elves, little
Oh yeah, yeah.
house robots that
Oh, I
they're
love that.
small in size. They move around. They can do whatever. And maybe it's time to, service your HVAC. Well, they download the HVAC, module and go take care of that.
I think you have a business model right there. Houseelf .com. I think that's really good. You don't take up space. They're easy to take care of. They
Yeah, the
self-charge.
battery dies. You just pick them up and go put them on the charger. If
Boom,
they
like
didn't make it
that.
there by
Yep,
themselves.
that's right. And just like a drone goes back to home, they'll go back
Yeah.
to home and stand on their charger and use that way of charging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the future is very likely to be generalized robots with apps that that provides specific functionality that you pay for. And that way you're not paying for bloatware. Remember that? Where you have to pay for software you never use. But really just one app at a time. I think that's a likely path. We'll see. We'll see.
Yep, we'll see. Fred, this has been a fun conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. And how can people learn more about Thrive and pick up a copy of it if they're interested and maybe connect with you online?
So if they go to thrivefutureu.com, thrivefutureu.com, you can read all about the book. You can download the first chapter. If you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble online, you can pre-order it today. It's all there, ready to go. It comes out on May 12th. And same thing, Thrive Future you can find me there.
Awesome. And I will put that in the show notes too at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. And hopefully everybody will pre-order. And I'm looking forward to the audiobook being finished so I can check that out for sure because I'm definitely an audiobook consumer.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's a lot of work, man. I'm in the booth I've been recording for weeks, like 6 hours a day. It takes a while. But we're getting there.
All right. Well, cool. Fred, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate having you.
Take care. Really nice to be here.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.